The knock never came. That was the first thing that felt wrong. On a night when the Wyoming wind sounded strong enough to tear boards from a barn, rancher Caleb Hart woke to the feeling that someone else was breathing inside his cabin. His eyes opened. The fire in the stove had nearly died. Orange light flickered across the room. Everything looked still. Then he noticed a shape beneath his blanket. A second shape. Someone was in his bed. If you've ever found yourself awake in the middle of the night wondering what you would do, stay with this story. Caleb was about to face a choice that would change everything. His hand moved slowly toward the revolver hanging from the bedpost. The shape shifted. A woman. She was curled tightly against the wall, wrapped in the edge of his blanket, like a person hiding from the end of the world. Caleb sat upright. The mattress creaked. The stranger's eyes opened instantly. Dark eyes. Sharp eyes. The eyes of someone who had learned to wake at the smallest sound. Neither spoke. The wind pressed against the cabin walls. Snow scratched across the roof. The woman pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Caleb finally found his voice. "Who are you?" No answer. Only silence. The woman looked toward the door. Then toward the window, like she was measuring every possible escape. Caleb lowered his revolver slightly. She did not look dangerous. She looked exhausted. Her black hair hung loose around her face. A worn woven tunic showed beneath a weather-beaten coat several sizes too large. One sleeve was torn. Mud stained the hem. Her hands shook faintly, not from weakness, from cold. The kind of cold that settles into the bones. Caleb climbed out of bed. The floorboards groaned beneath his boots. He lit a lantern. Warm light spread through the cabin. That was when he saw her feet. Bare, cut, bleeding, the skin looked raw from miles of frozen ground. Caleb stared for a moment. Nobody crossed that much wilderness without a reason. Nobody. The woman followed his gaze. Slowly she tucked her feet beneath the blanket, almost embarrassed. Caleb rubbed his jaw. His cabin stood nearly 20 miles from the nearest settlement. A woman did not simply wander here by accident. Someone chasing you? The question lingered. The woman swallowed, then gave a small nod. Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just honest. The answer settled heavily in the room. Outside, a loose shutter slammed against the wall. Caleb looked toward the window. His thoughts raced. Trouble had a way of spreading. A stranger could bring danger straight to his door. He had spent years building a quiet life after losing nearly everything. Now that quiet life sat only a few feet away, wrapped in his blanket. The woman watched him carefully. Waiting, not asking. Waiting, that made it harder. People who begged were easier to refuse. People who simply endured were not. Caleb walked to a wooden chest. He pulled out another blanket. Without a word, he tossed it toward her. She caught it against her chest. For the first time, something changed in her face. Not a smile, just a slight release around her eyes. A small sign that she had expected worse. "Stay warm," Caleb said. The woman lowered her gaze. A moment later she spoke. Only 2 words. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet and rough. The words carried an accent Caleb could not place. He sat beside the stove. Neither spoke again. Hours passed. The storm deepened. Snow rattled against the glass. The cabin groaned beneath powerful gusts. At some point the woman drifted asleep. Caleb did not. Something bothered him. He studied the stranger through the lantern glow. Her coat had shifted slightly. Near her collar hung a small carved jade pendant. The stone caught the light. Green, smooth, beautiful. It looked expensive. Far too expensive for someone crossing the wilderness barefoot. Caleb frowned. Then he noticed something else. a dark stain near her side. Not mud. Not shadow. Blood. Fresh blood. His stomach tightened. The woman suddenly twitched in her sleep. A frightened sound escaped her throat. Her hand moved beneath the blanket. Caleb expected her to pull the fabric tighter. Instead, she gripped something hidden. A folded piece of paper. Even asleep, she refused to let it go. The lantern flame flickered. For one brief second, the paper slipped open. Caleb caught sight of a drawing. A map, and at the center of that map was a symbol he recognized immediately. His heartbeat stopped. 3 years earlier, he had seen that exact symbol carved into a military strongbox that vanished after a deadly stagecoach robbery. The robbery that left 6 men dead, including his younger brother. Caleb slowly rose from his chair. The sleeping stranger tightened her grip on the map. Outside, somewhere beyond the storm, a horse suddenly screamed. Then came the faint sound of riders approaching through the darkness. Fast, very fast. And they were heading straight for his cabin. The riders reached the cabin before sunrise. Caleb counted 4 shadows moving through the storm. 4 horses. 4 men. The sound of hooves shook the frozen ground. Inside, the woman woke instantly. Her eyes found Caleb. Then the window. Then the rifle in his hands. She knew. Whoever she had been running from had finally arrived. The riders stopped outside. Silence followed. Not even the wind seemed willing to move. Then came a hard knock. Once, twice, 3 times. The cabin door rattled on its hinges. Caleb stepped forward. The woman rose from the bed. She looked pale beneath the lantern light. One hand remained pressed against the folded map. The other touched the jade pendant around her neck. The knock came again. Louder, Caleb opened the door only a few inches. Snow rushed inside. A broad man stood on the porch. Gray beard. Scar across his cheek. Cold eyes. The kind of eyes that measured people like livestock. "We're looking for someone." His voice carried no warmth. Caleb leaned against the doorframe, not seeing anyone. The man's gaze drifted past him, toward the cabin interior, toward the woman. For a split second, their eyes met. The stranger stepped backward. The bearded man's expression changed. "There she is." The woman immediately shook her head. No, one simple word. Yet Caleb noticed something. Her voice carried certainty. Not panic. Not guilt. Certainty. The man took one step forward. "She belongs with us." The woman moved closer to the stove. Her breathing quickened. Caleb did not move. "Funny thing," he said. "People usually don't run barefoot toward a blizzard when they want company." The men outside exchanged glances. The bearded man's jaw tightened. "She's a thief." The woman looked directly at Caleb. Then, slowly opened her hand. The folded map rested in her palm. Lie, only one word. But Caleb believed her. Something about the way she stood reminded him of wounded animals he had rescued during winter storms. Cornered, ready, yet refusing to surrender. The bearded man noticed Caleb's hesitation. His expression darkened. "That paper belongs to us." Now Caleb was certain. Men did not chase a freezing woman across half a territory over a simple theft. Something else was hidden inside this story. Something worth killing for. The bearded man suddenly smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Last chance. Caleb slowly closed the cabin door. The bolt slid into place. The riders outside began shouting. Boots pounded across the porch. The woman stared at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Caleb held out his hand. The map. She hesitated. Seconds passed. Finally, she surrendered it. Caleb unfolded the paper. His eyes moved across faded markings. Mountain ranges. Old trails. River crossings. Then he found the symbol. The same symbol from the military strongbox, only now there was more. Coordinates, notes, a location hidden deep inside the Bighorn Mountains. His pulse quickened. The stolen strongbox had supposedly carried Army payroll gold. Enough money to disappear forever. Enough money to start a war. The woman pointed toward one section. Mine, Caleb frowned. She touched her chest. Lian. For the first time she offered her name. Lian, a Chinese name. She pointed toward the mountains again. My father. Then toward the riders outside. Kill him. The pieces slowly began fitting together. Her father had discovered something. The men outside wanted it. And now they wanted her. A gunshot exploded through the darkness. Wood splintered near the window. Lian dropped low. Caleb grabbed the rifle. Another shot. Glass shattered. Cold air flooded inside. The riders were done talking. Caleb pulled Lian behind the stove. The cabin suddenly felt very small, very fragile. The door shook under a heavy kick. Once, twice, 3 times. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Lian reached beneath her coat. Caleb expected another map. Instead, she revealed a revolver. Old, small, well cared for. The sight surprised him. Lian checked the cylinder calmly, not showing off, not trying to impress, simply preparing. The door cracked. A boot appeared through the opening. Caleb fired. The rifle thundered. A scream followed outside. The boot vanished. For several seconds, everything became chaos. Men shouting, horses screaming, snow blowing through broken glass. Lian stayed beside him. Steady, focused, her eyes never left the door. The cabin groaned beneath another impact. Then, silence returned. A dangerous silence. Caleb moved carefully toward the window. He looked outside. Nothing, no movement, no riders, only drifting snow. His stomach tightened. They were planning something. Lian suddenly grabbed his sleeve, pointed toward the rear wall. Caleb listened. At first he heard nothing. Then came a faint scraping sound. Slow, deliberate, someone was circling behind the cabin. The bearded man had changed tactics, and judging by the grin spreading across Lian's face, she knew exactly what he intended to do. Because he had used the same trick before, the realization hit Caleb like ice water. These men had hunted her for a long time, and whatever waited inside those mountains was worth far more than gold. Outside, the scraping stopped. A shadow appeared beneath the back window. Then another. Then another. Lian raised her revolver. Caleb tightened his grip on the rifle, and the first hand reached through the shattered glass. The hand barely made it through the window. Caleb fired. The rifle blast filled the cabin. The hand vanished. A cry echoed outside. Then came the sound of running boots circling through the snow. The men were searching for another way in. Lian remained beside the stove. Her revolver stayed steady. No shaking, no wasted movement. The storm had eased by then. The silence between gunshots felt even sharper. Caleb crouched near the broken window. Watching, waiting, the next attack came from the roof. A heavy thump overhead. Then another. Snow slid from the shingles. They're climbing, Caleb muttered. Lian nodded immediately. She pointed toward the trapdoor leading to the attic crawl space. The realization hit him. If the men broke through the roof, they would drop directly into the cabin. Caleb moved fast. He shoved the heavy table beneath the trapdoor. The first axe strike came seconds later. Wood cracked above them. Another strike. Another. The ceiling began shedding splinters. Lian suddenly stepped forward. She reached inside her coat and unfolded another piece of paper. Smaller than the map. Older, she handed it to Caleb. My father. Caleb glanced down. The paper contained names, dates, Army seals, transaction records. His eyes widened. This was not a treasure map. Not really. The hidden location marked in the mountains wasn't gold. It was proof. Proof that military officers had stolen payroll shipments years earlier. Proof that innocent men had been blamed, including the men accused after the stagecoach robbery, including Caleb's brother. The room seemed to tilt. 3 years. 3 years believing his brother died as part of a criminal gang. 3 years carrying that stain. And all along the truth had been buried. Another axe strike exploded overhead. Caleb folded the paper carefully. Now he understood why they wanted Lian dead. Not for treasure, for silence. The trap door suddenly cracked. A boot smashed through. Lian fired. The revolver barked. A man screamed. His body crashed backward off the roof. The remaining attackers began shouting. The bearded leader roared orders outside. Then everything changed. The smell reached Caleb first. Smoke. His stomach dropped. The men had stopped trying to enter. Now they were trying to burn the cabin. Flames appeared outside the broken window. Orange light danced across the walls. Lian looked toward the door. Then toward Caleb. The rear exit. They both thought it at the same moment. The cabin would not survive long. Caleb grabbed his rifle. The map. The documents. Lian took only her pendant, nothing else. Together they rushed through the back door. Cold air slammed into them. Snow covered the ground. The cabin behind them glowed with growing firelight. The riders spotted them immediately. There, the bearded man pointed. Gunfire erupted. Caleb and Lian sprinted toward the tree line. Snow kicked upward around their boots. Branches whipped against their faces. The forest swallowed them. For several minutes they ran without stopping. The riders followed. Hooves thundered behind them. Closer. Closer. Then the ground suddenly dropped away. A narrow canyon opened before them. Lian stopped. Not from hesitation, from recognition. She knew this place. She pointed toward a hidden path winding between rocks, the same path marked on the map. They climbed quickly. The riders reached the canyon moments later. The bearded leader saw them. His face twisted with fury. Get them. The chase continued upward. Wind screamed through the cliffs. Loose stones rolled beneath their boots. Then Lian stopped beside a massive boulder. She placed her hand against the rock. Searching, feeling. Suddenly part of the cliff shifted. A hidden opening. A cave. Her father had hidden more than documents. Inside rested a large iron chest. Caleb stared. The chest bore the same military symbol. The truth had been waiting here for years. The riders reached the ledge below. The bearded man saw the chest. His eyes widened. Not surprise. Recognition he had known all along. He lunged upward. Pistol raised. Caleb fired first. The rifle cracked across the canyon. The bearded man stumbled. His weapon slipped from his hand. For one long moment he stood frozen. Then gravity took him. His body vanished into the canyon below. Silence followed. The remaining riders stopped. Their courage disappeared with their leader. One turned his horse, then the other. Within moments, they were gone. The canyon belonged to the wind again. Caleb lowered the rifle. His breathing came hard. Lian stood beside the chest. The rising sun painted the mountains gold. For several seconds, neither moved. Then, Caleb opened the chest. Inside were ledgers, letters, official records, enough evidence to expose every lie, enough to clear his brother's name forever. Lian looked toward the horizon. The first sunlight touched her face. The years of running seemed to fall away. Below them, smoke rose from the place where Caleb's cabin had once stood. Everything he owned was gone. The cabin, the furniture, the life he had built. Yet he barely looked at it. Lian stepped close. Her hand found his. Not seeking protection. Not asking permission. Choosing, Caleb squeezed her hand once. Far below, riders disappeared into the distance. Far above, an eagle circled across the bright morning sky, and together they began walking toward the trail that led out of the mountains, the iron chest between them, the truth finally in their hands. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share where you're watching from.